All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. So my name is Elvis Nuno. I'm the president of the Pacific Northwest Rural Broadband Alliance. I'm joined as well with my co-founder here, Jacob Doby, and Andrew Connor from the Center for Community Ownership. So we wanted to convene this call to talk a little bit about the roots of our organization, kind of how we were founded, what we've been doing this first year of our operations, and then describe really kind of where we're going with things into this year and years to come. So really the issue started out when we looked at the internet penetration rates across the country, and nationally 40 million people lack broadband connectivity in America. And over a third of rural Americans don't have access to broadband. That includes families that make over $75,000 a year. They have plenty of money to pay for internet. They just simply don't have the access, no matter how much they want to pay. And really over the years, big telecom companies, they've released new and faster services to our metropolitan areas and really kept them going on into the future, but they've left our rural communities largely ignored. Their operating models really just don't allow for them to be profitable inside of small communities, and that's really caused most of rural America to really be left behind in the dust. And there in the past there have been sort of several characteristics that have caused things to be difficult for rural America and building out this infrastructure. But in the last years, that barrier has really come down, and the capital that's required to build and maintain these systems has become much more affordable, allowing organizations to start with much less initial capital. And then recently, really the final key that came into place is what's now being known as Web 3.0 technologies. These are tokenized systems that allow for multi-stakeholder systems to be designed through which you can create community-owned and operated networks and applications that run on top of the internet. And really what this ultimately means is that the power of the internet was really always meant to be in the hands of individuals, not in the hands of governments or corporations, but to be a neutral network with infrastructure that's owned by the people, really for the people. And so we stumbled upon a technology called Althea that uses this blockchain technology that maybe a lot of people might know, be familiar with from Bitcoin. But this blockchain technology really has a lot of applications outside of cryptocurrency. So these Web 3.0 technologies have led to this technology called Althea. That's a decentralized infrastructure technology that allows for creating of a mesh network of wireless receivers that people can put on their homes, businesses, or other freestanding structures, and serve internet to their neighbors in a peer-to-peer fashion. And they're incentivized to host these relays by getting a real-time revenue for the amount of bandwidth that they contribute to the network and serve to their neighbors around them. So this is really revolutionary because it allows for us to take much more affordable wireless ISP hardware and couple that with an automated system that allows neighbors to pay neighbors for bandwidth that they serve to each other and provide encrypted, fast internet connectivity from household to household. So our organization, we're a veteran of telecom and tech industry engineers, where we've worked in the industry for a combined 50 plus years. And we have a really long-standing experience with blockchain technology. So we wanted to take our combined knowledge of these industries and this revolutionary technology that's being developed to form the Pacific Northwest Rural Broadband Alliance. And our idea through this was to be able to go from community to community and help them build the ISP infrastructure that they need, and really in whatever way that they really need and see fit. And so over the course of our first year of operations, we've developed a three-pronged model through which we can approach really any community and ultimately deliver to them the infrastructure that they need. And this three-pronged model takes the form as, say we go into a community and they have a group of individuals that would like to form a broadband co-op or ISP of their own, but they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the technical expertise or the history to know really how to do that. So in this case, we have the example of to the north of us, Mission West Community Development Partners that we've partnered with to help Mission Valley start their own broadband co-op. And from there, we can help them plan, go through all of the planning stages, and then ultimately to launch the network and continue to provide them with the support that they need to build a successful network and continue to maintain that and meet the continuing growing demands for faster and better service. Then there's examples like here in Missoula, where we started our flagship network, where there might not be that group of people wanting to start their own autonomous organization, but we can still go into that community and coordinate directly with the residents of that community to build out this mesh network and really own and operate all the logistical functions of the ISP to ensure that everybody can get the service that they need. And in Missoula, that's been really successful over the last year. We started our first network here at the beginning of 2021. And so far, just in our pilot network phase, we have a little over 50 customers over an area that covers about 500 to 600 homes in the north end of Missoula. And we'll talk a little bit more about what we're going to be doing with that network here this year in a bit. But really the core and the third function of our organization is to go into a town that might have an existing ISP that's local to the community, but has been struggling to expand, be that serve areas that they haven't been able to connect historically, or just improve their service level of service to meet up with really current and future demands. And in this situation, we would go and partner directly with that ISP and help them integrate this Althea technology that we specialize in. But really the core of all of these models of development lie in community participation and community ownership, because that's ultimately the people that are using this service and relying on this service need to have a level of control and autonomy to own this infrastructure that they rely on and not have to be reliant on big telecom companies to provide them additional services. They need to be more self-sufficient. So community ownership and community participation is really where the success of all of these models really hinge. And in that line, we connected with, about a year ago, Andrew Connor here from the Center for Community Ownership, and looked at investment crowdfunding. And investment crowdfunding is a really great new means through which businesses can source local capital from individuals inside the community that anybody can invest in businesses that they see a value in, rather than investing in, say, the stock market, where their money goes out of that community and doesn't really do any direct good for them, or might be sitting in their savings account really effectively just losing money. But to describe really the power of investment crowdfunding and really what makes that so unique, I'm going to hand that over to Andrew to explain a little more.
Thanks, Elvis. So let me just get this shared up here. So yeah, as Elvis said, my name is Andrew Connor, and I'm the director of the Center for Community Ownership. And as Elvis suggested, our core work is about finding, communities that have some sort of hole in their local economy, whether that's a grocery store or a hardware store or childcare or internet, for example. And if they've got a hole that is not being filled by chain stores or traditional entrepreneurs or traditional investors, we can provide the support for the community to come together organize itself and create a community-owned business that can fill that hole and bolster the local economy, increase tax revenue, jobs, fill storefronts in downtown, and so forth. We also work with existing business owners who are looking to transition, whether they're retiring or moving on. And if they don't have a great buyer for their business, they can always sell it into community ownership, and the community can preserve, again, those jobs, the services the business provides, tax revenue, and so forth. So that's kind of our core work that we do. But we also, one of our partners working on this national work is Crowdfund Main Street, and they are an investment crowdfunding platform. And that is basically, as Elvis said, investment crowdfunding. It's like traditional crowdfunding, like Kickstarter or GoFundMe that you might be familiar with, in that a lot of people come together, often contribute small amounts of money, and it adds up to make something happen. But the difference with investment crowdfunding is that in traditional crowdfunding, you can't earn money on the money you donate. It's just a gift. You're not getting a return on that. You can't buy shares of a company and get a dividend or benefit if that company then gets really big and sells, or you can't lend them money and get an interest rate returned on it. But in investment crowdfunding, you can do that. So it's actually a real investment, not just a donation. And it's totally regulated by the Securities Exchange Commission, the SEC. It's totally legal. It's got a lot of conditions that keep investors safe. Any investment is a risk, but there's a lot of protections in there to make sure that things are above board and are not fraudulent, and have all the sort of disclosures that everybody needs to make an informed decision. So Crowdfund Main Street does this on a national level, and we partner with them on different projects. And we really encourage them to create this site, Crowdfund Montana, to serve, as Elvis mentioned, Montana-based businesses and organizations. And we did this for two main reasons. One is that we wanted to help businesses and organizations access capital that have a hard time accessing capital. And there are tons of reasons for that. Maybe they don't have a wealthy network of friends and family, which is a very common way that entrepreneurs kind of get started. Maybe their business is in a new industry or doesn't quite fit into the kind of the algorithms that the bank uses to determine who gets a loan and who doesn't get a loan. Maybe it's because the way they look, there's all sorts of systemic barriers in the capital markets as well. So there's this whole category of businesses in the middle that are just not being served by lenders, venture capitalists, angel investors, all the kind of normal sources we think of for capital. So that was one reason. We really want to make sure that these businesses don't struggle just because they happen to not fit into that mold. And the other reason is that, as Elvis mentioned, we wanted to provide people with an alternative. As it stands right now, it's kind of like keep your money in the bank or invest in Wall Street. Send it to some huge public company that you have no relationship with, no control over, no connection to, and who knows what kind of impact they're having on the world, and your money is leaving the community. Instead, this is a way that you can invest in Montana and not only get a financial return if the business is successful, but also drive positive change here in Montana. So with Crowdfund Montana, we're really trying to create a strong community of local investors in Montana. And so you can see on the screen here, this is just a shot of the Pacific Northwest Rural Broadband Alliance's offering page on Crowdfund Montana. And the website is down there. You can go check out their offering and check out the site and more offerings that we have coming. And you can also go to the Center for Community Ownership website, which has just sort of more explanatory and descriptive information about Crowdfund Montana as well. And that URL will come up here again in a minute. I want to really emphasize that this approach of investment crowdfunding has a lot of power. People are forever complaining about the fact that big business and big government and all these sort of forces in our lives are kind of, pushing us regular people around and making decisions and that we're sort of at their mercy. And I just want to really encourage people to realize that it doesn't have to be that way. And this is one tool to really make change in that sense. So here's an example. In Missoula, there are 2 zip codes. And if you just look at the money that is sitting in checking accounts, savings accounts, and certificates of deposits, or CDs, and money market accounts just sitting in those banks in those 2 zip codes, it is over $2.5 billion. That is liquid capital sitting in bank accounts just in Missoula. And granted, not all of that money is money that people are ready to invest. It might be their rent money. It might be, their kind of savings of some kind that is already committed. But it gives you a sense of the scale of available capital that we have in a place like this. And you might say, oh, well, Missoula is one of the, the wealthiest cities in Montana. And fair enough, it is. It has one of the highest concentrations of wealth, among the top 3 or 5 places in the state. But Malta, which is a tiny town up on the High Line, this is how much there is in their banks sitting there, liquid capital, over $200 million in a town of a couple thousand people. So we have the power to use this capital to drive the kind of economic change that we want in Montana, to support the kind of businesses that we want to have here and create the kind of jobs that we want to have here. We just need to do something with it that is local, and not send it away to Wall Street, and not put it in somebody else's hands, not give that power away. We need to use that power in an intentional way. So I really would strongly encourage you to consider investing in the Pacific Northwest Rural Broadband Alliance, because the benefits of this are multifaceted. One, if you're a customer, they are really valuable to you. They benefit you because they're providing direct service to you. If you're not a customer, you might be at some point if they have the funds to expand. And even if that's down the road, they have a tremendous social benefit, because they are bridging the digital divide, which is holding back people who don't have high-speed internet access and can't be meaningful participants economically, socially, culturally, educationally, medically in our society, because that internet access is a necessity to participate in any sort of meaningful way in our modern world. And this is also part of a transformative shift in how we think about investing, where we put our money. As I was just talking about, you can actually be a part of this. And if you've ever complained about the dynamics of investing and money and power, now is your chance to actually do something about it. So it's really important that you consider actually investing if you're in a position to do so. You can earn a financial return. You can accelerate Pacific Northwest Rural Broadband Alliance's work. And you can help this sort of cultural transformation into what we do with our money in Montana. So don't just think it's a good idea, go and actually invest. These big numbers about how much money is sitting in bank accounts doesn't mean anything if that money continues to just sit in bank accounts. The point is that we don't need the blessings of people with lots of wealth and power and control. We can fund this work with hundreds of people coming together to do it. It democratizes the process. And we always talk about how we want this. So it's time to take action. And I'll just give you a quick overview. It's super easy to invest. You go to crowdfundmontana.com. We actually can't talk about the specific details of the Pacific Northwest Rural Broadband Alliance's investment, because there are SEC regulations about how you communicate that stuff, but you can get all of those details at crowdfundmontana.com, and all sorts of information about the company and their background and how they're going to use the money and all sorts of stuff like that. This process is extremely secure. It's just like making a transaction of any kind when you shop online or when you bank online. You just need a couple pieces of information about this to finalize an investment. So when you go to the platform, just have your name, which hopefully that's an easy one, your address, your date of birth, your annual income, and your net worth. And the reason why they ask for those, annual income and net worth, that's not the company collecting information on you. That is required by the SEC, because the amount that you are allowed to invest is a percentage of those numbers. So anybody, no matter what their income or net worth is, can invest up to $2,200 a year in investment crowdfunding. And you can invest more if your income and wealth is over a certain threshold. So you need to bring those numbers to the platform, because it'll tell you how much you're allowed to invest. But that's not about information collection or whatnot. And then you also just need your social security number and your banking info, just the routing number and your account number. And then you can just make a direct transfer, and then you're an investor. And I will really say, like, it has all these practical and kind of big social benefits that I'm talking about, but I also really just want to emphasize that it's exciting too. Like, I've invested in a few things, and it really is super gratifying to be a part of something like that. It can feel a little bit weird because this is a new thing and it sort of lives in this space because it's values driven, that it sort of like feels like donating, but it's not investing, and it's investing, but it doesn't feel like buying stock on the stock market. So it's kind of a new space, but don't be weirded out by that, because it's really, you support their work, and then you stay in the loop with what they're doing and how they're expanding. And you can say, like, I was a part of that. I helped make that happen. And so this is a really important shift to investing in something you can really connect with, be a part of, and understand. And, that's another difference between this and Wall Street. You can't call the CEO of Google and talk to them about their plans and why this might be a good idea. You can call Elvis, you can send him an email, and I guarantee you he would love to have a call with you and talk about their work and what they're doing. So you can have a real relationship with this. You can explore it and decide if you're comfortable with it. So don't be shy, do it, tell other people about it, and thanks for considering it.
Perfect. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah. And really that one word that Andrew uses, democratizing, right? So that's really a core part of our core values that we really wanted to do with the internet, right? Is democratize it. Is that so much of the control of internet infrastructure has been held in the hands of big telecom or governments for a very, very long time. And so now we have a model that can be operated effectively at any scale. Even a community of a few hundred people can build a profitable network. And we're hoping that through this one avenue, through investment crowdfunding, that even just a few hundred people getting together, throwing in a few $100s, can amount to more than enough capital to build a very effective network that can deliver fast service and cheap, affordable, and encrypted service to any community at any scale of even just a few hundred people on up to tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. So that's really what we hope to set the standard with our crowdfunding investment crowdfunding campaign, that can then hopefully go on to have more successful campaigns with other organizations that we help start, or existing organizations that we help really bring into the future with this new technology that we're working with. So that kind of brings you to what we're doing this year, right? So this year we're really looking to expand quite a bit, right? We laid down our foundations over the course of 2021, of our model of how we'll operate, of how we can best effectively serve rural communities. Helping start broadband co-ops, helping local ISPs, building these networks in communities that need them. And so Crowdfund Montana is one of those aspects where we're looking to get the community is involved in any way and every way possible. And really propel this thing, across the state of Montana, across the region, across the country, potentially across the world. So really, following our Crowdfund Montana campaign, following a few other sources of funding that we've managed to secure, we have a few really exciting projects that are coming down the pipe here this year. So obviously the first and foremost is expanding out our Missoula network. So as I mentioned, right now we have, really just effectively a pilot network, a soft launch where we wanted to evaluate the technology, ensure that we're going to be able to deliver the speeds, the prices, the reliability that we would, we would expect from any service that that we would subscribe to, and certainly any service that we would provide to people. And we established that. We have a lot of really happy customers up in the Grant Creek area where our network's operating. So we're going to be expanding our network across the Missoula and Bitterroot Valley this year. We'll be going from Bonner on the east end to Huson on the west end, North Grant Creek from the north end, and all the way down to Hamilton on the south end. So that covers over 70,000 households. And again, really even to emphasize the lack of access broadband, in Montana is that in that roughly 70,000 households of our proposed service coverage area, there are 15,000 households that don't have access to modern broadband presently, right? So that's a huge market, and that's a market that companies like Spectrum, right, or CenturyLink, they're never going to provide the level of service that those customers and that those residents need, because 15,000 households to them is really effectively nothing. They churn more customers than that in any given day. And so they're not motivated to make the investment. But we can do that through a technology that's lowered the barrier of entry, that allows us to operate more nimbly, more efficiently, and then also, most importantly, facilitate community ownership of that network, and allow people to actually own a piece of last mile infrastructure that they get paid a real-time revenue for helping getting their neighbor connection to the internet, and so on and so forth. So that's one of our, obviously our big push and initiative. We're also talking with other organizations in Washington. We're talking with organizations in the Texas Waco Killeen area to build networks there. And we're also working with other blockchain decentralized infrastructure projects that revolve around technologies around privacy, online privacy and security, that provide various different features and functions around things like more accessible and more reliable cloud storage, or being able to stream services from all over the world, and have affordable and secure voice telephone home services. So we're doing a lot of work inside of the blockchain decentralized infrastructure sphere, working with different projects, and working with different organizations around the country to start new networks, and bring these communities this technology, and help them provide service to areas where they presently are really lacking for service. And so we really encourage people to go to our investment crowdfunding page, look at our offering there, and also look at our reviewed financials to see exactly how affordable these networks are to start, because it's really, it's on a whole nother level, that really any community can pull together the capital, whereas historically it might take say $500,000 or $1 million. Now anybody can effectively start an ISP with a very small amount of capital and have that be not only sustainable but profitable at an incredibly low entry level. So that's really the exciting work that we're doing. We're hoping to make a lot of progress this year, and we will keep people updated every step of the way. So with that, George, you've been sitting there very, very patiently. Love to hear your ideas, any questions you might have, things like that.
So, Andrew, are you in Missoula also?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. The whole concept or the methodology is really cool, because I'm old enough where we kind of experienced the start of the internet. I was a school superintendent at that point, and there was all this dream about how the internet was going to provide this kind of democracy net, and to a degree it has, and to another degree it hasn't. When you start understanding the number of people that actually have the majority of the wealth, you could go the big four on your hand.
Right.
Most of them are internet companies, and so I really applaud you. So one of the questions I had, if I'm understanding, Elvis, you're in that pilot, you have the ability to do, I thought I heard somewhere around 10 to 15,000 homes in the northern part of Missoula, kind of the north side of Missoula. and it sounds like you have 50. How do you grow the number of users? How are you experiencing that?
Right. So yeah, so we started off with, we wanted to take a chunk of Missoula, that we could experiment with the hardware platform that we're using and also the software platform that we're using. We took this year to take that chunk. So we're in the Grant Creek area. And yeah, we have about 15 users covering about 500 to 600 houses in this area. That was to evaluate, again, the hardware and the software to see the type of range that we can get from these wireless equipment, type of performance that we can get off of it. Our primary goal was to ensure that we could absolutely deliver every customer at least 100 megabit symmetric service. Even if their line of sight was obstructed or, there were things in the way. Even right now, even our slowest customer, where their signal's going through houses and trees and everything, they're still getting at least 150 megabit symmetric, right? And our customers are paying anywhere from $25 a month, for our light users, to big families are paying about $80 to $90 per month. So then, we've over the year, we've taken that, refining that this platform to ensure that we can scale that, to then mark out points along the Missoula and Bitterroot Valley, where we can build out these core relays. And at this point, we've worked with some venture capital groups and some crypto projects to secure funding for these big core relays that will allow us to shoot radio links out to the high ends of the valley, and to the tall buildings in the center of the valley, right? So we really have this mesh networking style really allows us to use geography to our advantage, and particularly being in Missoula, being in the valleys with some tall buildings in the center, we have that advantage where we can put a line of radios sort of down the valley floor and then also out toward the valley edges. And from there, you have line of sight to pretty much everywhere. And the range on these radios is really incredible. So we can get fiber equivalent speeds on 60 gigahertz radios that go up to about 10 to 12 kilometers total. And really most of our shots, they'll really only need to go about 5 to 6 kilometers, between one side of the valley for another. So for our expansion plan, we've staked out those places, the internet exchange here in downtown Missoula, and then specific points around the ridges of the valley, and then down into Lolo. We've discussed with property owners these sort of key points that are going to give us the best line of sight to cover the most ground possible. We ran a pre-registration campaign early on, where we had where you're really just through word of mouth and about $20-30 into the Facebook posts, we have over 600 customer pre-registrations, and we've sort of mapped those out across the values. So we have there's about 600 people that are ready and waiting to get connected. So even just with our first initial expansion that we're planning here for the north side of Missoula, that'll cover another probably about 500-600 homes right out of the gate, and we have about between 50 and 100 customers just in that area, just immediately ready and waiting. But overall, our plan, and with where we've been able to stake out these core primary relays that are going to allow us to span across the valley, that we expect that we should be able to reach, certainly the vast majority of those 15,000 households that currently lack broadband entirely, inside of the year. So the sort of cadence that will go is to build out these relays to the very edges of our proposed service area, and then slowly build our way inwards. So it's we have really a huge demand. We get called every single day. Building the internet is is a long process, as I'm sure you're, Rome wasn't built in a day. But yeah, it's really just a matter now of the weather cooperating with us, and then going in and putting in those relays where we'll then connect to those areas where people are currently really hurting and lacking for broadband. So yeah.
Some of the things that we really learned from the Grant Creek area was, how to make sure that, our switching works. One of the big things we don't want to do, everybody hates rework, but, if we were just to go slap these things in real quick across the valley, we're going to open up this big old can of worms of issues, and it's going to be very painful to fix it. So we're being very strategic about how we deploy this and going in phases and moving our way outwards so that we can maintain the reliability that we've seen in the Grant Creek area, so that nobody suffers. And some of the other things we're trying to do is make sure we have bandwidth, high amounts of bandwidth in strategic locations close to the customers, because that's going to ultimately drive their costs down. For example, if we were to have a gateway in Missoula and 20 hops down the way we hit Bozeman, it's going to be more than that, but they're going to be paying 20 people for data versus if we put a gateway in Bozeman.
Right. Yeah. And that's really the great part about this Althea, system. Whereas with most ISPs, all customer traffic comes back to one big pop, right? One data center where all the connections come back in, and it's this very overbuilt, huge location where, certainly there's plenty of redundancy built into those pops, but if there were a natural disaster or anything, something swallows that up, that whole network goes down. With our network design, we're able to geographically disperse those points of fiber backhaul, so that we'll have it dispersed across the valley. Whereas one of those locations can go down, and the network is self-healing and will route back to the closest location, to the closest fiber circuit. So this means of distributing out, all the bandwidth demand will ensure that everybody will receive not only the best service, but also the best reliability. And really what's been, pretty incredible is just, in this pilot network we've started, we've had 100% uptime, and the number of support calls, even just, like, hey, my computer isn't working. Just minor support calls have been incredibly minimal. We really, I could probably count on two hands the amount of support calls I've got over the course of the entire year, from our customers. So that really gives us a sense of, when we're scaling out to, hundreds and then thousands of customers, what's our load going to be like in terms of customers calling in for support, how many bodies are we going to need to cover that? And thus far, it's been, very, very low impact, very, very reliable. And yeah, our customers have been really happy. And then, particularly our relay customers, we've reached at least the first point where customers owning these relays, that the income that they receive from them are covering their monthly service costs, either almost entirely, or we have one customer that their service fees are entirely covered by the income that they're earning from their relays. And then we also have, sort of another set of relays, these bigger ones that will serve wider areas and go longer distances. Those ones actually really produce a fairly good, recurring revenue that like a business might invest in. There might be a little higher cost, but will ultimately generate a recurring revenue for that business that's fairly significant. So yeah, that's kind of the plan.
Yeah, the whole mesh network and the blockchaining really fits in nicely to the concept of the crowdfunding, the community investment, because maybe a business like in the old sawmill district like ours, or and you're helping some of the 15,000 identified homes that don't have broadband, and if you've invested in the crowdfund funding, you're not only helping them with your relay. So there's and the other one is Jacob, Elvis and I talked about it, Andrew. It's like there's another concept where the whole Bitcoin and cyber cryptocurrencies is kind of one world that and they're getting all the current, but I've consulted to a company, Mitsubishi Power, and this whole blockchaining of everything. So even energy, you have green energy through the same kind of network, and the blockchaining technology and the mesh technology. Somebody at a soccer game goes, they touch it, and there, you see some available renewable energy, and it ends up, kind of being part of your overall, energy for that few
Right.
minutes. And the idea is that we don't have to build these huge, data centers and pops or generating facilities. When you're using your asset through, digitization, you just maximize it. But you also, the crowdfunding, in the community, as this is all pulling away, there's people in the, different zip codes, that aren't part of that 2.5 billion that,
Mhm.
can benefit from it. And,
Right.
like you said, some of the people that are maybe able to put in a little bit more into the crowdfunding, get the good feeling. It's like, hey, not only kids, but families and, parents can remote work just like other places or, other people, and
Right.
enhance their income. So it's all cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's been the biggest thing, particularly as we're talking to people in the crypto sphere and blockchain, is that there are an incredible amount of applications for blockchain technology outside of just Bitcoin, and cryptocurrency. And a lot of that, can be very, very intimidating for people. The value, fluctuates rapidly, whereas our certain system, is working off of a stable coin. All transactions are going over in USD, but it's just using that blockchain technology, smart contracts to have, routers pay each other for bandwidth, and very much in this, there have been very similar projects with renewable energy of being able to sell my excess power that I generate from my, solar power or whatever, being able to sell that to my neighbors. So yeah, very much the same, concept, and really what this amounts to is allowing communities to be more self-reliant, and yeah, not having to rely on big corporations, not having to rely on big centralized services, power plants, big centralized data centers, big centralized, and being able to decentralize all of that, have everyone have their own stake in it, whether it be through a relay, whether it be through crowdfunding, all these means that we can be more self-sufficient through this model. And that's what the whole goal of our nonprofit is, and what we're working for.
My other question, and you've answered it, not as directly, but the question, but you guys are not only the alliance to get the equipment in place and, get it up and operational, you're the nonprofit that's going to continue operation and maintenance of the whole system as a plan. And, that's the other part of that, and I know, Andrew, you've been talking, you know this better than me, but, those are real jobs in Montana. So instead of saying, okay, I was the president of our state superintendent's group back in '93, and, we made a case where, we were doing a great job. Our kids were doing very well with, all the national assessment. The problem we had that you could track them, and they had went through not only, grade school and high school. Some had got their degree in Montana or, in other states, but they, like 3 years out of graduating from either technical school or high school in '93, over 80% of them were not living in Montana. They went over Lookout Pass and headed for Microsoft and Amazon and those places. And if you really want to build community, don't export all your kids out of state. It's not really hard. And we're getting better. In fact, we're getting people moving back here because it's a great place to live. But they can't do it if we don't have broadband availability, not just in Missoula, but up in the Mission Valley, in our case, St. Regis, Mineral County. Just so you know, what I've talked to Neil, theirs is more of a middle mile play, to get all 56 counties. And it's the estimate is somewhere in that 800 million. And a lot of it's built on the fact that there's so much money in the infrastructure, broadband bill, 65 billion. And then
Right.
it's so hilarious because, we're trying to do it with the people. And there's this big private equity firm that invests. They already own 123,000 miles of fiber, in the United States. They're a
Right.
real estate investment trust, stock market traded, but
Right.
that maybe that model, has to be deployed in maybe some of that middle mile, stuff, but we can still do it. Like I told Neil, I said that whole concept of the blockchaining and the kind of more distributed network. And, if we can't get fiber to everybody's door, they're just a little too far out, catch the edges. But the main one is, put in a blockchaining digitization thing where, everybody can kind of, if we're going to have a community ISP, we can't do it without not only the technology, but the concept that you guys are throwing in. And he's in total agreement. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the big thing. I mean, fiber infrastructure. We've done a fairly good job of kind of the core fiber infrastructure and backbone across our country, but there is a lot of middle mile that still needs to be done. I mean, definitely in terms of the internet routing for Montana, a lot of rural areas is still is still hurting. So fitting in fiber connections where they need to be, and then when it comes to those where you might be, 10 miles down a dirt road for 5 homes. Well, you're not going to lay fiber for, maybe 5 homes, but you can, lay fiber to the nearest crossroad and shoot these, these wireless links out to them, so long as you have that, that really, good network of backbone, fiber infrastructure. And that's really what it's going to take, because really there's no one silver bullet. There's no one solution that's going to solve all of it. It has to be a really a combination, and a holistic use of all of these different mediums, and then make that as efficient and distributed as possible. Jacob on our Washington side, so we've also been working on Anderson Island. Anderson Island is another example of a location it's very, very isolated. It's an island in Puget Sound, so there's a underwater fiber cable that's running there, but it's very, very dense foliage. We've been talking with Tanner Electric. They're laying fiber because they need they need to have internet monitoring for all of their electric infrastructure. But so long as they're laying that, we can also, they're laying fiber along the road. We can lay these wireless relays that get out to homes that are sort of denser into the foliage. So there's really all these opportunities now that are coming about. You need that, but this this decentralized infrastructure really allows a much more efficient model, and everybody to hold a small piece of it, whether it be just a $100 radio here, or a $15,000 radio there, or say $100,000 in fiber between one town to another. So yeah, I mean, it's all those solutions that are going to take to get all of our 30%, 40 million people nationally that don't have internet. That's a big problem, and it's only organizations like ours that are taking on that challenge, because big telecom has just said it's not worth our time. They'll hook up Seattle or Chicago or LA or New York or whatever, but when it comes to St. Regis, right, they're not as interested.